Newt Gingrich makes his presidential bid official today. Let's review some of his other more notable and recent public statements, like this one on the Today Show almost a year ago. Let's listen.
You say that Obama and the Democrats are pushing what you call the secular socialist agenda. And you write, quote, the secular socialist machine represents as great a threat to America as Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union once did. Can you honestly compare what's going on with the Democrats to Nazi Germany?
No, it's not a question of how evil they were. Nazi Germany was terrible. Stalin's Russia was terrible. Mao's China was terrible. It's a question of finality. Had we lost either of those contests, we would have become a radically different country. The secular socialist agenda clearly is for an America fundamentally different than America has been for the last 400 years.
But when you hear that term Nazi, that's one of those inflammatory words that can turn people off to any message you might have.
Look, the fact is that if you look at the threat they represented to the American way of life, now I'm not talking about the moral equivalence, I'm talking about the finality of losing.
What a culture clash. Meredith Vieira, a normal American person, listening to insanity and trying to get the insane person to explain it. Then, of course, last September, Newt Gingrich told National Review magazine, listen to this, what if Obama is so outside our comprehension that only if you understand Kenyan anti-colonial behavior can you begin to piece together his actions? That is the most accurate predictive model for his behavior. This is a person who is fundamentally out of touch with how the world works, who happened to have had played a wonderful con on us, as a result of which he's now president. For more on Newt's behavior, we're joined by Mother Jones's David Corn, who's an MSNBC political analyst, and also John Alter. Gentlemen, I give you free fire zone on this character. I think he's a menace in terms of elections, but maybe we'll learn something from the horror of what he says. We've got a lot of quotes I want to give you, but start off with your original thoughts on these two guys. David, then John.
Well, Chris, we at Mother Jones put out a list of some of his biggest whoppers over 33 years, and it was a 10-page list we put on our site today. But I want to start with the very first one, something he said back in 1978 when he was running for Congress. He said, one of the great problems we have in the Republican Party is that we don't encourage you. He was talking to college Republicans, young Republicans. We don't encourage you to be nasty. Well, we have over 33 years of Newt Gingrich nastiness. We just saw a sample. You can read about this on, and he hasn't changed over that period of time. He's tried to be a statesman periodically, but he always comes back to this nastiness. It's in his personal life, it's in his public life, and it's going to be in his presidential campaign.
John, everybody's a Nazi, by the way. That's one of his favorites. Right. Go ahead, your thoughts.
Or Neville Chamberlain.
Well, This is a guy, as a kid, he toured World War I battlefields. He's a history nut. He's written some history books, and he thinks he's Winston Churchill. So he's going to make this comeback. He was compared in the New York Times this morning to it being like a Nixon comeback after Nixon lost in 1960. But what he's really attempting is a Nixon comeback after Nixon was impeached. This is a guy who resigned in disgrace as his speakership because of hypocrisy that was just off the charts. He was persecuting Bill Clinton in the most inflammatory terms while he was carrying on a 6-year affair after having dumped his wife when she was in the hospital with cancer, his earlier wife. So it goes on and on, the list of particulars. But in terms of what comes out of his mouth, he's what I think of as a pyromaniac of history.
Okay, let's go through it. Let's make your point because, gentlemen, I want you to follow up with watching these pictures. Here's Newt a year ago talking about the president. Let's listen. We got a lot of footage of this guy.
The President of the United States, the most radical president in American history, has now thrown down the gauntlet to the American people. He has said, I run a machine, I own Washington, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now, that's where we are.
Well, let's take a look now at something he said recently. The Obama-Pelosi-Reid system is clearly a secular socialist machine. And Obama's the most radical president in American history. What is this new precious bodily fluids right out of Dr. Strangelove? Why is he saying secular socialist? What's that about, that phrase?
Well, he's trying to appeal to social conservatives, despite the fact of his messy personal past, 3 wives and 2 bad divorces. He's trying to go out there and whip up the evangelical vote by saying it's not just that he's a socialist, he's also a secularist, which really means atheist. He doesn't believe in God. These people don't believe in God. They want to take God out of the public sphere, and it's nothing.
But what about, isn't the government,
demagoguery.
But John Alter, you're an historian, a real one, isn't the United States government supposed to be secular?
It is, but look. His main point here is to try to depict Barack Obama as a dangerous radical, out of step with American life, the other. You know, that's what this whole Kenyan socialist thing is about. So
he's a Mau.
It's thinly veiled racism.
Yeah, well, thinly. Kenyan, anti-colonial. How about Mau killing white people?
That comes
give
from
me a break.
Dinesh D'Souza analysis. But the irony here is that he's the radical. He's the one who wants to repeal the New Deal, go back to more of a 19th century idea. So when he talks about the stakes of this election, he's right on that. The stakes are big, that if the Republicans get control of all 3 branches of government, we are going to see a privatization of Medicare and Social Security.
Let's take a look
to the past.
Let's take a look
at
this.
The radical.
Let's take a look at, here he is again, November 2008 on Fox, of course, on Prop 8 out in California. Let's listen to him because he's got a new phrase for this one.
Yeah.
Look, I think there is a gay and secular fascism in this country that wants to impose its will on the rest of us, is prepared to use violence, to use harassment. I think it is prepared to use the government if it can get control of it. I think that it is a very dangerous threat to anybody who believes in traditional religion.
David, what is gay and secular fascism? This is a new sociometric overlay here. Gay fascists. Well, there they go.
Newt Gingrich is Glenn Beck with better syntax. I mean, that's all this is here. Talking about fascism, he said that the Obama agenda will end America as it has been for 400 years. He's just trying to whip up fear and exploit the concerns and racial and other resentments of the far right. And I just, talk about politics when the sunny personalities and optimists, people who look to the future, tend to win. He is a troglodyte saying we're about to fall into hell unless you vote for me. I mean, that may play in Iowa, but it won't play anywhere else, and it won't play with independents.
Let's step back to the real world of conservative Republicans. I mean, maybe there are people really, really red-hot angry, but how angry would you have to be, John Alter, to vote for this guy, even in a caucus?
Well, he's going to get some votes because he actually, there were times when I had some fascinating conversations with him where I thought he was, in the 90s, he was actually right on a few issues. So it's what day you catch him on. There's kind of the good Newt, who sounds reasonable and intelligent, and then there's the unbelievably irresponsible Newt.
Well, here he is.
Part of it is who's going to show up in Iowa, and you never can tell on a given day.
Well, here he is whipping up trouble. I mean, this is about the mosque, a few blocks from World Trade Center, which I think is something we can argue about reasonably. But here's Newt not doing it that way. Here he is last August during the fight over that, talking about it in the way he does. Let's listen.
Nazis don't have the right to put up a sign next to the Holocaust Museum in Washington. We would never accept the Japanese putting up a site next to Pearl Harbor. Right. There's no reason for us to accept a mosque next to the World Trade Center.
What could he possibly mean, by the way, by the Japanese putting up something? What is he talking about?
Well,
what is he next? Like there's a next to Pearl Harbor. What's this? That's world water out there. But
what he's doing is comparing Islam to Nazism, which is his favorite metaphor. I'm sure if a school safety guard at some crossing doesn't do something right, it's part of a fascist plot. Again and again and again, he's obsessed with World War II, whether it's the Holocaust, Neville Chamberlain, and everything comes back to these large metaphors because I think it's because he's a megalomaniac. But he can't talk in reasonable tones about policy differences.
Chris, he will say anything to try to score points. So
Thank you.
When
that is it.
When Obama would not invade Libya, he was, when's he gonna bomb Libya? When Obama does bomb Libya, suddenly he's all over him for bombing Libya, and he's completely shameless about the way he uses political rhetoric without the slightest regret, any sense of remorse over anything that he's done in his long career.
Well, if he's Winston Churchill, then Snoopy really was fighting the Red Baron. Anyway, thank you, David Corn, and thank you, Jonathan Alder.